Oh, welcome to Dolly Talk. This is Dolly. How is everybody doing today? Hey, bye, Franz, and Paul. Good to see you here. Today we are going to go back and cover a trial from 2019, the Todd Mullis trial. The reason for that is yesterday, he started he appealed. He was convicted. Spoiler, I know. He was convicted and appealed it. And actually, it's pretty rare, very rare. His appeal was not just denied. He gets an opportunity to present evidence that he has found since the trial, stuff that should have come in. His attorney claims was ineffective. So some of the new stuff gets presented to a judge to decide if he gets a new trial. So other people are streaming that, so I thought it would be cool to start showing the original trial. It's not that long, just a couple days, 3 days, I think. We can kind of go through the highlights of it and see what's going on. It's in Iowa, so it involves a lot of corn, extramarital affairs, and corn rakes, because there's not a lot to do in Iowa. So right now, hey, Erica. Let's see. Okay, so we'll start with opening statements here. Give me a few minutes. I might be able to move over to VLC, but for now, we'll have to do this off Court TV's website.
Okay, would the state please read the charge in this matter?
That is a shiny head.
Good morning. Good morning. In the Iowa District Court in and for Delaware County, State of Iowa plaintiff versus Todd Michael Mullis. Number FECR 012941. Trial information. Comes now Delaware County Attorney John Bernard and Assistant Attorney General Denise A. Timmons as prosecuting attorneys, and in the name and by the authority of the state of Iowa, accuse Todd Mullis of murder first degree, committed as follows. Todd Mullis, on or about the 10th day of November 2018, in Delaware County, state of Iowa, did kill Amy Mullis in violation of Iowa Code sections 707.1 and 707.2 1A. A true information, signed John Bernard, Delaware County Attorney, signed Denise A. Timmons, Assistant Attorney General. To this charge, the defendant has entered a plea of not guilty. Thank you.
Okay, and whenever the state is ready for opening statement, go right ahead.
Go right ahead. Don't you know? I'm from Minnesota.
Amy Mullis was a young and beautiful woman. She was 39 years old. She was a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a friend, and a mother
Cheating whore.
to her
I mean
three
mother.
young children. She was at her home on November 10th, 2018, and went outside
Fancy.
to help do some work on her farm. But little did she know, her death would come that morning. In Amy's last moments on this earth, she would feel the corn rake that she was stabbed with in her back. She would feel that rake pierce her body. She would collapse to the ground. Her lungs would fill with blood and air. and she would take those last breaths while she lay on a floor in a shed on her farm. Amy had so much life left to live, but that life was viciously taken from her on November 10th, 2018, taken at the hands of this defendant. We would love for you to get to meet Amy, but you won't. Instead, you will share a courtroom with her killer.
Ooh.
This brutal, senseless murder happened not far from here. And
For the record, guys, I just Googled corn rake. And all I get is all I get here. Oh, that can't really see that. No, still can't. God damn it. There. All you get is this murder case with a corn rake, but Google doesn't really tell you what the hell. Okay, corn rake versus pitchfork. It's still more crap about this. You can go to images. I'm going to figure out what the hell this is. Oh. So I guess just a typical farm thing, I guess.
a town called Unraveling. And to understand what happened, we have to go back to November 2018 and the time before that. Amy was not happy. She was having an affair and she was planning on leaving the defendant. The defendant knew something was going on. Amy had previously had an affair and they had reconciled. But in July 2018, the defendant knew she was having another affair. He confronted Amy and she denied it, but that just wasn't good enough for him. There was still a lot of tension and distrust, and the defendant had to do something. Over time, this kept weighing on the defendant. He wasn't going to let Amy get away with cheating on him again, and more importantly, he wasn't going to let Amy take half of his farm. You see, the defendant grew up on a farm. His father's a farmer, his brothers are farmers. He became a farmer himself. Being a farmer means everything to him. He has put his life into that farm. The defendant had to find a way to keep his farm. He couldn't let Amy leave him and take his money or land or half of his farm. That morning, when Amy walked out of her house on November 10th, 2018, to do chores on the farm, it appeared to be a day like any other. Amy didn't know then what you will all know by the end of this trial. That walk that she had taken hundreds of times out of her front door to the hog barn would be her last and would lead to her death. What made this day different than any other day was the defendant and his cold and calculated plan. November 10th, 2018 was finally the day that Amy's husband of over 14 years was going to carry out his plan. A plan in which he tried to think of everything, tried to avoid getting caught, a plan in which he carefully waited to carry out until he felt like he had the perfect opportunity. The defendant made sure the only people at his farm that day were him, his wife, and his kids, because he didn't want any other witnesses. He had gotten Amy outside to help do chores on the farm, and then he had to separate her so he could execute his plan.
This is Iowa corn farmers, so I think it's safe to say we can just make fun of everybody. But seems like a pretty good opening for the state, and I hate to say that. But the state, I think, does some slimy things from what I've seen so far.
He sent Amy to a red shed to get something. And that's where he then attacked her and killed her. He used a corn rake because he tried to make it look like a farm accident. He was hoping that people would just feel sorry for him and not ask any questions. He then went back to the hog barn, distancing himself from the crime he just committed, acting like nothing happened. And what did he do then? He sent his 13-year-old son to go and find his mother, who he had just slaughtered.
Or he didn't kill her, and he sent his son to go fetch his mom. I mean, the only way that's a really aggravating factor is if he did it, but if he didn't do it, then it doesn't really matter. Hey, Schnoops.
The defendant acted like he was upset. He had to. This was his big moment, what he had been practicing and planning for months. He immediately started telling his story. He told 911 she fell on a corn rake. The defendant believed he thought of everything, but what he didn't count on was what happened next. Nobody believed his story. The doctors and law enforcement knew something just wasn't right. The doctors could tell that Amy was struck at least 2 times in the back with the corn rake. This was not an accident. It was a homicide. The defendant's plan wasn't so perfectly thought out. Now, you're going to hear a lot about Todd and Amy's relationship before this happened. And you're going to hear about how Amy was fearful of the defendant, how she told her friends and family members that she was planning on leaving him, but that she was afraid that if he found out she was having an affair, he would kill her. And she also told another friend that he would make her disappear. But wait, that's not all. Because what you're also going...
But wait, that's not all. Call now in the next 5 minutes and you'll get 2 murders for the price of 1. Okay. Are you trying to sell me a freaking ShamWow here, sweetie?
To hear is that the way that we know that the defendant planned this was after the police executed a search warrant on his house. They collected the defendant's iPad that is connected to his personal Gmail account. And they were able to see searches in the months before Amy's death. Proof that he was planning to kill Amy. Looking up things like how to kill unfaithful women. The evidence in this case is overwhelming.
Well, who hasn't searched that? I mean...
And the trail of evidence leads to only one place, to where Amy's murderer sits across this courtroom from you today. And make no mistake, the defendant earned this seat in this courtroom by what he did that day, November 10th, 2018. After you hear all the evidence in this case, the judge is going to instruct you on the law as it applies to the evidence. And then you will know that there is only one verdict. Only one verdict supported by both the law and the evidence, and only one just verdict, a verdict of guilty.
Dun, dun, dun.
I agree.
Okay. All I heard there was...
And Corn Pop was a bad dude.
60% of the reason I chose this trial was to use the corn pop joke.
Was some of what the state has just mentioned to you in opening. On November 10th, 2018, in Delaware County, Iowa, Amy Mullis was viciously and deliberately murdered. The issue that you will have to decide in this case is really not who did it, but whether Mr. Mullis did.
That I don't know yet which way I'm going on this one. I will say the extra holes is a little sus. it sounds like the defense here really had to go into she was murdered. In the hearing or the mini trial to see if he gets a new trial, they bring up the fact that the defendant on the stand admits she was murdered and things like that. It's just kind of a bad fact for them. Hey, David, how are you?
The evidence is much along the lines of what you've just heard. On November 10th, on that Saturday morning, Todd and his son Tristan, who's 13 years old, went to another farm that they farm and manage, do some chores. There had been some chisel plowing, that's my term for it, had been done on that property the day before. And Todd's plan was to do some more on that Saturday. It had gotten cold, the ground was too frozen, so that plan had to be abandoned. Todd and Tristan returned back to the home place where the two younger children and Amy were up and about. They had a small breakfast, and Todd and Tristan announced or stated that they were going to go out to the hog barns and get ready for a delivery of small pigs.
Ooh.
The Mullises had these large hog confinement barns, and maybe I'll use the wrong terminology here, but these are giant barns, much like a football field. And they bring in small pigs when they're being weaned off the sow, and then they're raised to butcher weight and hauled off the farm and sold. They were getting ready for a delivery of those small pigs, and there was a lot of mechanical things to be done in the barns. So their plan was to go out and start that process. A few days before, I believe on November 6th, you'll learn that Amy had had a medical procedure. She was having some bleeding problems, and the doctors had recommended that she have a minor surgery, which it was done. I believe that you will hear that the testimony was that she felt cooped up, had been in the house for several days, and wanted to join Todd and Tristan. It was her idea to go out and help work in the barns. And she did. And you'll hear that when they got out in the barn, each of them, Todd, Tristan, and Amy, set about to do different things. Todd was going to take these pipes, and I think you'll hear them referred to as nipple feeders.
Kinky.
They're actually water pipes with small nipples on them, so that these small pigs used to nursing off their mother will now nurse water from these pipes once they've been put in these pens. Todd was doing that. Tristan was getting these heaters that had been stored in a storage area he would bring these to each of the pens and set them out ready to be installed. Amy was there was light fixtures above these pens in walkways. And they were, as you might imagine, with all these hogs, the manure and the smell, that there was lots of flies. Not in November, but there had been when there had been pigs in the barn, the large hogs. So Amy set about to clean those fixtures off, to take the fly feces off of the globes around those lights. And to do so, she couldn't just stand and reach up and do it. She would use a pail sometimes, or stand up on the fence partitions if there was a place to put her foot. And that's what they did. Each kind of doing their own thing, all within proximity to one another.
Welcome, Half Irish.
At some point, Todd noticed, Tristan noticed, that Amy seemed to maybe lose her balance, comment upon her dizziness. And this is something that Todd had witnessed even before she had had the medical procedure on November 6th. His comment was, "Honey, take it easy. Why don't you go back in the house? Don't push yourself." She wanted to help. So she continued on, and there was again observation of her unsteadiness. So finally she agreed that she would stop what she was doing, still wanting to help. Todd says, if you want to do something, there was a mother cat had a litter of kittens, and they were being kept in the shop, which was in between the hog barns, a little off to the, as you look towards the house, a little off to the right. Somehow the mother cat had gotten run over by a skid steer or pickup or tractor or something. So the kittens were abandoned, not abandoned, they were just there by themselves. And each time that they'd open the door to get equipment in and out, there was a fear that they were going to run over some kittens, upset the smaller kids. So Todd says, there's a pet carrier over in that old red shed. You can go over and get it. Just put it up by the shop on your way into the house. Okay. She leaves the hog barn. Todd and Tristan continue to work. They're doing these two chores of theirs. At some point, and I believe you'll hear that Tristan said the only time that he ever was out of his father's sight was to go into an office area. It's more of just a separated area off the main part of the hog barn where there's some equipment, and he got a drink of water. Kind of just turned the faucet on, there's a hose hooked to it, and he thought he did that maybe twice and was out of the main hog area for a very short period of time. Todd was still in there. He was in there when he went out to get a drink, he was in there when he went back. They worked for some period of time, and I don't think there's a real good handle on what that period of time is. Maybe an hour, hour and a half. And at some point, they look out towards the house, and where you can see up by the shop where this pet carrier would have been placed by Amy per this plan, and it wasn't there. And Todd says to Tristan, why don't you go see what's going on and get that pet carrier if it's not up there? Tristan goes to the shed where an awful, awful thing had occurred. Tristan yells for his father. He comes, he finds her in the shed horribly with this corn fork stuck in her back. And you'll see pictures of this shed where you get in these sliding doors, which were kind of frozen open, but a pretty short width. And then you go in and there's a bunch of these plastic farm sprayer tanks, and you kind of turn to the left and then you go down this hallway. And in fact, down that hallway, there's some auger screws laying on the floor, but there you see this pet carrier that's partially pulled out from a shelf. But Amy's out laying on her face, or on her hands and knees, crunched over near the door. It's so horrible. Todd cannot get her out of the shed without taking that fork out of her back because the doors weren't wide enough. There wasn't enough room to move her. So he did it. And he had Tristan help him get her in the pickup, literally laid across their laps, called 911, and proceeded to drive as fast as he could towards medical care. The 911 operator directs them to a certain location where he or she, I can't remember, is sending law enforcement to meet them and ultimately emergency equipment. And they meet on a roadway out in the country, where Amy is then transferred from the pickup into an ambulance and taken to the hospital, where she is soon pronounced dead. Tristan was taken by a friend, Michael Krogman, from the scene back to the farm. Two deputies had asked for him to do that, for Tristan to go back there so that he could show them where he found his mom, a little bit about what happened. And Tristan did that. Then Tristan went to the hospital where he meets with family. He's questioned briefly there by law enforcement. He basically tells you the story that I just told you. Maybe not in quite so much detail. Todd did state that he thought he had no other explanation. She went in the barn, she ends up with a fork in her back. She must have fell. He had no idea. But we will learn, you will learn, that she didn't fall on the fork, that there was 4 tines on this fork, and you'll see it here in the courtroom, that there was more than 4 wounds to Amy's body, that she was struck more than once. But when she was there working in the barn, and you'll see pictures of her clothing, she had on several layers of clothes, from a light shirt to another shirt. I think it was 3 layers, and one was a fairly heavy coat. So Todd couldn't see the wounds. There was some blood, and that was about it, quite a bit of blood. So his explanation was the only one he could think of. This wasn't something he manufactured. It was like, what else could it be? She was dizzy in the hog barn. Here we find her with this fork in her back. She was trying to get this pet carrier out of the shed. I don't have any other explanation. And that story remains consistent when he's questioned more completely by law enforcement. Tristan, at the farm, at the hospital, later questioned at a school, and later questioned at a professional, it's a CPC center, I think they call it, at St. Luke's Hospital in Cedar Rapids, where professionals who interview children who have been victims or witnesses. He was interviewed there, and again, his story remains basically the same.
And it's weird how there's extra holes, like she was stabbed twice. But the kid has always said the father was with him, and the father couldn't have done it. And in the new trial that started yesterday and today, the kid and his family are all there in the row right behind him, supporting him. So to this day, his son defends him. And the prosecutor calls the son as a witness. It's really kind of scummy to call this guy's son, to use him against the father to convict him. Did he?
Yes, I expect you're going to hear a history of this marriage. That approximately 5 years before this all happened, Amy was working at the hospital, I believe in Manchester, and that she had an affair with an individual. Todd ultimately learned about that affair. They, at the suggestions of friends and family, they went through counseling, and they worked through it. I believe you'll hear testimony from Todd that his marriage was important. His children were important. The farm life was important to him, but not so important that he's going to murder the mother of his children and his wife. There will be sometimes perhaps confusing text messages, phone contacts, or information about what was said by Amy. But I think you will find that Todd continued to work towards maintaining his marriage throughout all this confusion. But behind his back, Amy was having a significant sexual affair with someone who actually came to the farm on a regular basis. A gentleman by the name of Jerry Frazier. He worked for a company that contracted these hogs into these various hog confinement facilities. And I think he'll testify that he was responsible.
Okay, so Waterfall had corrected me It looks like the son did recant the statement. So this is why I really have a great chat. So thank you for that, Waterfall. I don't think the holes in her back line up, and that's a problem. There's a few, different things. And as Matt, I think it was you that said earlier, if he has hogs, you could just let the hogs take care of the problem. It's a very odd way to do it. Unless it was unless it was not premeditated and just heat of passion.
We're calling upon and servicing numerous hog operations like the Mullises. So he knew the farm, he knew the people, he'd come there on a regular basis, and he and Amy would have business conversations, business communication, I guess I'll call it, about feed and medicine for the hogs and things that were going on a business level. But he would say that in the spring of 2018, it became a flirting thing, and then it became a sexual thing. And
I mean, what woman doesn't just doesn't tingle in the nether regions when it comes to a hog supplier? Whew, boy. Even I want to drop my underwear.
it was extensive, that he and Amy would meet on various locations at various times, and it was sexual. I'm going to say you'll find that somewhere around the first part, at least the first half of July, Todd saw some phone bills that would show the amount of messaging going back between Amy and Mr. Frazier. And it bothered him. Bothered him to the extent that he called Jerry Frazier and said, "Hey, what's going on? Is there something going on?"
Couple Q's, love some
Frazier,
A's.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a nice guy. Amy wants the kids to get involved in showing pigs.
I'm just a simple pig farmer tending to my pigs. I ain't been sleeping with your wife. Honest.
Fairs and stuff like that, and I help out a lot of people, and we got our regular contacts about the hog operation there at the Mullis farm. Don't worry, Todd. Todd even calls his wife, and she thinks Todd's crazy. She doesn't suspect anything, and I think it's pretty fair to assume that Jerry Frazier convinced his wife that Todd was a little wacky, and don't pay attention to him. The affair continued. There was plans to meet at the state fair in Des Moines in August. Amy was telling people as soon as...
I mean, who wouldn't want to have a steamy love affair at a Iowa State Fair in Des Moines in August? Rawr. Go for the romp on the corn.
Jerry is ready and his kids have graduated, then I'm going to get a divorce and so forth and so on. But I don't think Jerry was quite into it like she was. But he admits it still continued right up until just a few days before this November 6th medical procedure. So I'm not going to try to lay out exactly all these text messages and communications, but there will be some. The internet searches that the state mentioned, there were phones, there were Kindles, there was an iPad, or excuse me, a laptop, and there was an iPad. An iPad used extensively for the hog and farming operation. It would actually be taken out in the tractors when you were doing, like, as I understand it, and I hope I'm not wrong, like GPS planning.
God.
That you could...
Well, it's an opening statement, I guess. I hope I'm not wrong. I'll just go ahead and tell you anyways, I could be mistaken. I'm just a simple country boy, corn-fed boy. Oh, well.
Coordinate with this iPad And also it was used in the hog operation because it had better Wi-Fi or whatever the connections. I'm terrible with this stuff. I'm too old. But it had better connections, so it'd be taken out in the shop. And that a dispute may be as to how many people had access to that and what the significance of these searches are, when they were made and why they were made. Folks, again, Ty Mullis's statements about Amy falling on a fork and dying accidentally was a honest, legitimate, on-the-spot explanation or an attempt to explain what happened to her. It was wrong. She was murdered. Horribly. But I believe that you will find that not only at the end of this case that there's a reasonable doubt about Mr. Mullis's guilt, but there's no doubt at all. Thank you.
Okay. So we got a little ways to go. We're going to call Jeff Fuller, Amy Mullis's brother. And I was just going through all this stuff, and it looks like Jerry Frazier does take the stand at some point. So maybe that'll be a little steamy. So let me pull this up.
I grew up in the...
Jeff, you had just indicated your name.
Yes,
Do you go by Jeff?
I go by Jeff.
And how old are you, Jeff?
I am 43. I'll be 44 tomorrow.
What area do you live in?
I live in the town of Eldora, Iowa.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up on the farm just outside of Eldora.
And was that on a farm?
On the farm, yes, sir.
Who did you grow up there with?
I grew up there with my mom and my dad and my sister Amy.
Did you graduate from high school?
I graduated from Eldora New Providence High School in 1994.
And did you receive any additional schooling?
Yes, I got my bachelor's degree in occupational safety and health, and I have a master's degree in organizational leadership.
And what is your current occupation?
I'm the human resources manager at American Packaging Corporation in Story City, Iowa.
Now, you indicated earlier that you lived with Amy Mullis.
Yes.
Who is Amy Mullis?
Amy is my sister, my younger biological sister.
Do you know Amy's birthday?
Amy's birthday was January 23rd, 1979.
No.
Yes.
Jeff, I'm handing you State's Exhibit 1. Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes, that's my sister Amy.
And is this a true and accurate depiction of Amy and what she appeared to be prior to November 2018?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would ask permission to publish this to the jury.
Before you publish it, we should have it offered first. Are you offering it into evidence?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Any objection? No, Your Honor. State's Exhibit 1 is admitted, and you may publish.
Thank you, Your Honor. Jeff, I'm showing on the screen what's been marked and offered as evidence as Exhibit number 1.
Yes.
Is that a photograph of Amy?
Yes, it is.
Is he really getting the new trial, Waterfall? We don't know yet. So they're trying, basically it's like a mini trial right now. It's going to be several days. They're basically going over all the facts of the case again, new stuff they've found since the trial, to say there's a case for him to get a new trial. So we won't know for a little while, a few days at minimum. But there's a possibility. I mean, it's pretty rare to even get the chance to kind of present all this evidence. But yeah, it's gonna be like, it looks like it's gonna be longer than the trial actually was. So it's kind of interesting. Where the hell am I? And hello.
Did Amy work?
She had been a registered nurse, and she had left that to work on the farm with the family farm.
And did Amy graduate from the same high school as you?
Yes.
And what high school was that?
Eldor New Providence High School.
What kind of things did Amy like to do?
Amy loved being outside, hunting, fishing, playing golf, but her biggest pride and joy was being a mom to her kids.
And you indicate, how many kids did Amy have?
Amy had 3 children,
And what are their names?
Tristan, Taylor, and Wyatt.
And their last name?
Mullis.
Do you know Todd Mullis?
Yes.
And do you see Todd Mullis in court today?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you please point to him and identify an article of clothing that he's wearing in court today?
He's wearing a green-gray shirt.
Your Honor, may the record reflect an in-court identification of the defendant by this witness.
It will.
Thank you. Now, you indicated that Amy, prior to her death, was actually working on the farm. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And prior to that, what kind of work did Amy do outside of the home?
She was a registered nurse.
And where did she go to school for nursing?
Kirkwood.
Now, you indicated that you met Todd Mullis.
Yes.
When did you first meet Todd Mullis?
I met Todd shortly after I got out of the Navy. It would have been 2003 or 2004 in that time frame.
And do you recall what year Amy and Todd got married?
I believe they got married in 2004.
What was the nature of your relationship with Amy like?
Amy and I had a good relationship. We would call and text. We got together on holidays and family events. I would go see some of her kids' events. She would come see some of my kids' events. We had a good relationship.
Who are your parents?
My parents are Robert Fuller and Peggy Munson.
And so would it be fair to say that Robert Fuller is your father?
Yes.
And where does Robert Fuller live?
He lives on the farm that we grew up on.
And is Robert married?
Yes.
And who is he married to?
Yes, he's married to Eileen Fuller.
And you indicated that your mother's name is Peggy Munson?
Yes.
And where does your mother live?
My mom lives in Ankeny with her husband, Randy Munson.
Did you and Amy ever talk about her relationship with Todd?
Occasionally. Back in around the time that Wyatt was born, which she said that she had not been happy, and she was just not happy back then.
How old is Wyatt currently?
Wyatt is 9.
And how old is Taylor Mullis?
Taylor's 11.
And how old is Tristan Mullis?
Tristan's 14.
Now, you indicated that you had this conversation with Amy when Wyatt was born.
Right around the time he was born.
And where did that conversation take place?
I think it was at my dad's house, but I'm not positive.
Now, I'd like to direct your attention to sometime around August 2018.
Yes.
Around that time, was there anything going on in your family?
Yes.
What was going on?
Our grandma, Margaret, who is my mom's mother, had fallen and was in the hospital in Des Moines. The prognosis was not good. Amy had gone to the hospital the day before I had gotten there, and then I met Amy outside of the hospital when we got there.
Jeff, let me just stop you there.
Yes.
So would it be fair to say that you and Amy were visiting your grandmother who was in the hospital?
Yes.
Now, at some point while you were at the hospital, did you have a conversation with Amy?
Yes.
And where in the hospital did this conversation take place?
We were outside the emergency room exit. She met me there. She was me and my wife. She was going to escort us up to Grandma's room.
Was your wife present for this conversation?
Yes.
And what's your wife's name?
Morgan.
And what, if anything, during that conversation did Amy tell you?
Your Honor, I'll object. Calls for hearsay. You want to respond, Ms. Hughes?
Judge, I believe based on the response to all of these statements that these statements are all admittable or are pursuant to the case law as well as the rules of evidence.
Well,
Right.
if you want to tell me specifically what rule you think creates the exception, it would be hearsay. If there's an exception, if you want to tell me what the rule is.
Judge, first, the state's position is that it's not hearsay because it's to show the state of mind of the victim and to show that she was fearful of the defendant, not that the actual acts happened that he's about to testify to, Your Honor. And then further than that, I think that if Your Honor does believe that they're for the truth of the matter asserted, it does go towards the victim's state of mind, its present sense impression, and it also...
Why don't we just go ahead and call every single rule of exception, just throw them all at the judge and see what sticks?
falls under the residual hearsay rule that we did file a notice of.
Without having heard the testimony of the witness, but believing I understand, I believe he's going to give testimony about the present sense impression or the then existing state of mind of the declarant. I'm going to overrule the objection for now and let him answer. Do you remember the question?
Yes.
Go ahead, you can answer.
So that conversation, when my wife and I approached Amy, she said that she was planning on getting a divorce and she was going to leave Todd, and that he was going to flip out.
Did she tell you when she would be leaving Todd?
At that time, she said it'd be a little bit later after the crops were out of the field.
Did she indicate to you that she was going to divorce Todd or just leave him?
She was going to divorce him.
Did your grandmother pass away from that time in the hospital?
Yes, she passed away that same day.
And shortly after your grandmother passed away, did you go anywhere to take care of her belongings?
Yes, my wife and I, my mother, her husband, and my aunts and uncles helped clean out Grandma's house in Eldora.
And were those all the people that were present on that day that were helped cleaning out the house?
Yes.
While that was happening, did you and Amy have a conversation?
Yes.
Was it just the two of you at that time?
I believe so. There may have been some people that overheard the conversation. We were all just around in the area.
What did Amy tell you then?
Amy asked me if she could store Grandma's couch and some chairs and lamps at my house so that she would have some furniture when she left Todd.
Did you then take any of that furniture?
Yes.
And where did you put it?
I stored it. I still have it in my garage. I had set it on some pallets and covered it with some tarps to keep the animals off of it.
And why did you keep that furniture?
So she would have furniture to, when she moved out, so she would have something to start off with.
During your conversation with Amy, did she say anything to you specifically during this conversation about Tristan, her son?
Yes. She said she was worried about Tristan because him and Todd were close, and when she left, she knew that Tristan would be angry with Amy for leaving.
When was the last time you spoke to Amy?
The last text message was the day before she was killed.
Would that be November 9th, 2018?
Yes.
And what was the nature of that conversation?
She had had a procedure earlier in the week, and she had sent me a picture of a bruise on her arm from the IV that was not put in very well, apparently.
At any point, did you have a conversation with Amy about an argument or fight that she had with her mother-in-law?
Yes.
And how did that conversation take place? Was that in person or over the phone or text message?
That was over the phone.
And approximately when did that conversation take place?
It happened shortly after, it would have been sometime in October. We had been at the hospital with my uncle who had had a brain bleed. And Amy had come down. We were with Mom in the hospital to support her because she had just lost her mother, and now her brother was in the hospital, and it didn't look very good at the time.
Around this time, was Amy spending a lot of time in the Ankeny or Des Moines area?
Yes.
And what specifically did Amy tell you during that conversation?
During the conversation, after she'd gotten home, she went to pick up her kids from her mother-in-law, and she said that her mother-in-law was was talking very negatively at her, telling her that Amy had been abandoning her children and didn't deserve to be a mother and was just a horrible person.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Please tell me again when your grandma had the fall and her resulting death.
That would have been August of 2018.
And after that, your uncle had some type of a medical issue too.
Yes, that's correct.
What was his name?
Jerry Granzo.
And do you know where he was hospitalized for this medical issue?
Yes, he was hospitalized in Des Moines.
Do you recall approximately how long he would have been in the hospital?
He was in the hospital for a few weeks, and then he went to On With Life to help with his recovery.
During the time that he was in the hospital or at On With Life, did you visit him?
Yes,
Did Amy?
yes.
Do you have an estimate of how many times Amy might have visited?
I don't know how many times she went. I know the one time was the last time I saw her alive. We went out for supper with my mom to help support her during that time.
Oh, he's a good son.
So every time you visited your uncle, it didn't necessarily coincide with a visit from Amy.
That would be correct, yes.
So really, you'd only be able to guess how many times she might have visited.
I could guess, but I don't have an answer.
Do you know if there were ever any times that Amy combined a visit to her uncle and her mom with activities that Taylor was engaged in, the tumbling, I believe, that she participated in?
I don't know if she did that or not.
Okay. And you believe it was sometime in October that Amy told you about having a run-in with Todd's mom?
Yes, I remember we had just left Uncle Jerry's, the hospital that he was in, and I had gotten home, and she got home the day after, I believe, and she called me.
Uncle Jerry?
Did she ever talk to you again about and tell you that Todd had actually stood up for her and criticized his mother for doing what she did?
No, I think that might have been the last time I talked to her in person before she was killed.
Can you stop breathing on the microphone, sir?
Were you aware that Amy had had this affair about 5 years ago?
No,
Were you aware up until the time of her death that she was having an affair?
no.
Thank you, sir. That's all I have. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Sir, can you spell Uncle Jerry's last name for the record?
Granzow.
Okay, thank you. You're free to step down.
Thank you.
Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead and have a seat. State your name and spell it for the record, please.
Eileen Fuller, Eileen Fuller.
F you.
Go ahead, counsel.
Ma'am, you indicated your name is Eileen Fuller.
Correct.
Could you tell us how old you are?
54.
Where do you currently live?
Iowa Falls, Iowa.
Where did you grow up?
Strawberry Point, Iowa.
And where did you go to school?
Starmont High School.
What is your current occupation?
Sales and advertising.
Are you currently married?
I am.
And who are you married to?
Robert Fuller.
Do you have any children?
I do.
And who are your children?
Whitney Gam and Zachary Converse.
And when did you and Robert Fuller get married?
2004.
And does Robert have any children?
He does.
And who are his children?
Jeffrey Fuller and Amy Fuller.
When you first met Amy, when was that?
In 2002.
How did you meet Amy?
I met her through a mutual friend.
And what kind of relationship did you have with Amy?
We were friends.
And when you first met Amy, her name was Amy Fuller.
Fuller.
And what kind of things would you and Amy do together?
Go to dances. She'd come to my house. We'd barbecue, swimming. I mean, just did a lot of everything together.
During that time when you first became friends with Amy, did you meet Todd Mullis?
Not for a while.
And how was it that you did meet Todd Mullis?
Through Amy.
And how did you meet your current husband, Robert Fuller?
Through Amy.
Do you recall when you met Todd Mullis?
I'm going to say that I met Todd in July of 2003.
And when did Todd and Amy get married?
Todd and Amy were married September 11th, 2004.
And when were you and Bob or Robert Fuller married?
July 31st, 2004.
So just a little over a month before, you and Bob got married a little bit over a month before Todd and Amy.
Correct.
Right?
Did you have a relationship with the defendant, a friendship or relationship? How did you get along?
Todd
Yes.
and I got along fine.
And when you initially moved on into the farm in Eldora, would Todd spend any time on the farm?
He did.
And in what capacity?
He and his father rented the ground, so they were there twice a year to put in the crops and take out the crops.
Were you aware several years ago, about 5 years ago, that Amy had an affair?
I was.
And how did you find out about that affair?
I found out through Amy.
After that affair, what did you observe about Todd and Amy's relationship?
We didn't see them a whole lot. They seemed to be working things out.
After that, after you found out about that first affair, do you remember a time when you had a conversation with the defendant?
I do.
And approximately how long after that affair was this conversation?
I'm going to say right around 2.5 years after.
And where did that conversation take place?
In my kitchen.
Was anybody else present for that conversation?
It was just Todd and I. The rest of the family was in the basement watching TV. It was a holiday. They were watching football.
What did the defendant, Todd, say to you at that time?
He said, "Eileen, do you know what Amy did?" And I said, "Yes, Todd, I do." And I said to him, "It looks like you're working things out."
Did he then say anything else to you?
He did. He said, "Well, I have to." He said, "I'm not going to lose my farm and what I've worked for."
Aw, what a romantic guy.
Now, in the summer and fall of 2018, did Amy have anything going on in her life that you are aware of?
In 2018?
Yes.
Yes. Amy was having some health issues at the time.
And was there anything going on with her mother's side of the family?
Yes. She had lost her grandmother.
And was anybody else in her family also in the hospital?
Yes. Not long after her grandma died, I know that her uncle had an aneurysm.
And were you aware of where Amy was spending a lot of time then?
She was down in Des Moines at the hospital, I was told, spending a lot of time with her, helping with her uncle.
Now, at the same time that Amy was dealing with these family issues, did you have contact with the defendant?
Todd had called me several times and discussing, worried about Amy not being home.
Now, you said he called you. Would he call you on your cell phone?
Correct.
And did you guys communicate any other way?
Texting, he would text me.
And did Todd say anything to you about Amy spending so much time at the hospital?
Yes.
What did he say to you?
He just said, she needs to be home helping with the kids. It was a very wet fall. I know he was trying to get the crops out. I know it was very aggravating. The kids were there, so he had a lot on his plate.
How often would the defendant call you?
Most of it was through texting. He did call on occasion.
And did you make any observations of the defendant behavior or how he was when he would talk to you or send you these text messages?
Mostly angry, just frustrated, anger.
And did these conversations with the defendant go on for a couple of months?
Yes.
And did Todd ever talk to you about his relationship with Amy?
He just said that they were obviously having issues. He didn't go into extreme detail, no.
At some point, did you have a conversation with Todd about him suspecting that Amy was having another affair?
Yes.
And was that, if you recall, were those text messages or phone calls?
Both.
And specifically, what did the defendant Todd say to you about that?
He just said he had confronted the field manager. I didn't really catch a name that he specified. It was his field manager, and he said that he had asked him about it. He had confronted he and Amy both.
And did he tell you what led him to confront them about it?
He said that via her phone, he could tell that, she was contacting him. They were contacting each other.
And at any point, did the defendant ask you for advice or ask you what you thought he should do about it?
He did, yes.
And what, if anything, did you tell him?
I said, I don't know, Todd. If that was me, I guess I would talk to his wife. I didn't. That's what I would do.
At that point, did you know who this person was that Todd was alleging she was having an affair with?
No.
Had you ever met him, or did you even know his name?
No.
Did Todd ever tell you about a fight between Amy and his mother?
Yes.
And again, was that text or phone calls or both?
He had texted me and said that Amy and his mother had just gotten into a fight. That was basically it.
Did he tell you anything else about that fight?
Something about his mother and Amy had, I'm not sure why Amy was there, what that situation was. He just said that our mom kicked Amy out of the house, meaning her home.
Can I just have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Ma'am, when Todd and you first talked about the first affair that Amy had had, I believe you've told us, and perhaps today I missed it, that this happened 2 or 3 years, the conversation with you and Todd after that had occurred?
Correct. About around 2.5 years. I didn't write the dates down.
When that conversation occurred several years ago, you said it was a family, maybe a holiday gathering?
Thanksgiving, correct.
Amy and the kids there?
Correct.
In your opinion, did Todd love his children?
Yes.
Love his career, his farm life?
Yes, very much.
Hard worker?
Very hard.
And you saw evidence of that because him and his dad rented ground from your family?
Correct.
Moving ahead then to late summer, or summer, August, September of last year, 2018, you said Todd communicated with you with concerns about Amy being absent from the home.
Correct.
And that was due to health issues of both grandma and uncle.
Correct.
You mentioned his plate full. Crops coming out about that time of year.
Correct.
Do you know how much land the Mullis Todd's operation was?
I don't exactly. I know they have quite a bit of land.
Pretty substantial.
Right, and renting and vice versa, yes.
And it sounds like from what you're telling us, that Amy was doing this family health issue visits without the kids going with her.
I can't say that for 100%. I know all the time that she was there, but I know when Todd had talked to me, they were at home.
So Todd's got the 3 kids and farm and weather issues and so forth. You said he was angry, frustrated?
He seemed angry, frustrated, yes.
But is this also about the time that he told you that he had some suspicions again about Amy's fidelity?
Correct.
And that he had talked to this farm manager?
He said he had talked to him, yes.
Did he seem satisfied that the explanation he got explained things?
Objection calls for speculation.
I'm going to let her answer yes or no. Do you understand the question?
Can you repeat that, please?
Did it appear that Todd seemed satisfied with the explanation he had received from this farm manager?
He didn't say either way. He just said he had asked him, confronted him.
But you then encouraged him to contact this man's wife?
He asked me what I would do. I said, I guess if it was me, I would talk to his wife.
Do you know if he did that?
I do not.
And then you told us this morning that Amy shared with you that she had, I'll call it a run-in with Todd's mom.
Todd told me that.
Right. And the issue was Amy's absence from the home. Was that kind of the,
Sounded like that was the basis of the argument, yes.
did you ever talk to Todd about that?
No, I don't. He had just told me that his mom had kicked her out. That's about the extent of that.
Did he also tell you that he confronted his mom about what she had said and done with Amy?
I don't believe so. I don't recall that.
Okay. You're not saying it didn't happen, he just...
Right.
Okay. You mentioned that Todd had made a comment to you back at this holiday thing a few years after the first affair that he didn't want to lose the farm. Isn't it true that he also added that he didn't want his family to be split up?
No, he didn't say that. He said, I'm not going to lose my farm and everything I've worked for.
Maybe this is incidental here, but the farm ground that Todd and his dad rented, who did that belong to?
Robert Fuller, Sr.,
Amy's dad,
Amy's grandfather.
grandfather, I'm sorry. And where did this land situate? Where was it located?
Between Iowa Falls and Eldora,
Okay.
Iowa.
And this was in the vicinity where you live?
Correct?
Okay. When you said that they would come out, put the crop in, come back, take the crop out.
Correct?
Would you have contact with them on either one of those occasions?
Sure.
Okay. Any recollection of any concern that or concern that Todd shared with you about his life with Amy, the kids, or anything like that?
You'll have to rephrase that. I'm not sure what you're asking me.
It was not a good question. during those encounters that when they would be there for farming purposes only, not family gatherings or anything, did you ever have any personal conversations with Todd then about family issues?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you, ma'am. That's all I have.
Any redirect? No, Your Honor. Okay, thank you, ma'am. You can step down.
Okay. About 15 minutes. Let's see. You know what, though? Let's start the sun. We'll just go like 10 minutes or so. And then we'll play more tomorrow. At same time, I hope.
Your Honor, this time the state calls Tristan Wallace.
Yes, Your Honor.
I want you to raise your right hand right now. Do you swear that the testimony you give here today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
State your name and spell your first name, please.
My first name is Tristan. My last name is Mullis. My first name is spelled Trysten. My last name is Mullis, and it's spelled
He's in a different room.
Mullis.
Okay.
I like that.
Counsel, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Tristan, what is your date of birth?
September 3rd, 2005,
And where do you currently live?
in Ankeny.
Who do you live in Ankeny with?
My grandmother and my step-grandfather.
Tristan, what grade are you in?
8th grade.
And do you like sports?
Yes.
What kind of sports do you like?
I like to play football.
And do you have a favorite football team?
Yeah, the Iowa Hawkeyes.
What else do you like to do in your free time?
I like to hunt. I like to fish. I like to go on a four-wheeler ride. I like to hang out with friends.
Tristan, what is your mom's name?
Amy,
And what's her last name?
Mullis.
And what kind of things did your mom like to do?
She liked to do puzzles. She liked to help out with the Delaware County pork producers. She liked to help people out.
Prior to living in Ankeny with your grandparents, where did you live?
In Earlville, or outside of Earlville.
And what was your address?
I don't know.
And did you live on a farm?
Yes.
Who did you live there with?
My mom and dad.
And what's your dad's name?
Todd.
And do you have any siblings?
Yes.
What are your siblings' names?
Taylor and Wyatt.
How old are Taylor and Wyatt?
Taylor is 11 and Wyatt is 9.
When you were living on the farm, is there anything that specifically you were in charge of or you liked to do?
I had chickens that I took care of.
And what are how did you take care of those chickens?
I fed them, watered them. I picked up the eggs when it needed to be picked up.
Did you actually sell the eggs to the customers?
Yes.
And how much did you sell them for?
$1.50 per dozen of eggs.
Wow. I mean, I'm kind of jealous. I mean, now he'd be making a ton of money.
Were you able to keep that money?
Yes.
Now, what kinds of things did you do with your mother?
She took me shopping a lot, like for school clothes. We went to some Iowa Hawkeye football games. Just stuff like that.
When you lived on the farm, who worked on the farm?
We all did.
And when you say we all did, who do you mean?
Both my parents, me, and my brother and sister.
And what kind of things did your mom do around the farm?
She kept the paperwork for the chemicals. She ordered feed for the hogs that we have. She just do a lot of paperwork.
And what kind of things would your dad do on the farm?
He'd do the labor work, like the chores and the field work.
Did doing all the farm work take up a lot of your dad's time?
Yeah.
And did you help a lot on the farm?
Yes.
Sometimes did you actually take time off school to help on the farm?
Yes.
And you, back in 2018, what was your relationship like with your dad?
Close.
What kind of things would you do with your dad?
Chores. We would go hunting, fishing, go on a 4-wheeler ride. We'd farm together, obviously. Just stuff like that.
Did you and your dad talk about how someday the farm would be yours?
Yes.
Did you and your dad also talk about you possibly being homeschooled so you could help even more on the farm?
Yes.
Now, Tristan, I'd like to direct your attention to November 10th, 2018. Do you remember that day?
Yes.
Where were you at that morning?
In the house.
And what's the first thing you remember that day?
Just waking up.
And where did you go after you woke up?
To my room to get my clothes on.
And then where'd you go?
Went upstairs.
Did you at some point leave the house?
Yes.
Who did you leave with?
My dad.
And when you left the house, who was at home?
My mom and my brother and my sister.
Where did you go that morning?
To the other hog site where we had hogs that needed to be taken care of.
Tristan, tell me a little bit of the farm that you lived on.
We have a house. We got a few grain bins that stored either corn or soybeans. We have a shop, basically, where we do all the maintenance on the equipment and the vehicles. We have actually a storage shed for those vehicles. We have 2 hog buildings, and that's pretty much it.
Ms. Hughes, can you grab the microphone from Mr. Firehelm and set it up by you so everybody can make sure they hear you?
Tristan, would it be fair to say that you had 2 hog barns on the farm?
Yeah, at my house, yes.
And you had indicated a minute ago that that morning you left at some point to go to a separate site?
Yes.
Would that be off of your farm?
Yes.
And whose farm did you go to?
It was not really on a farm. It was kind of in the middle of a cornfield along the highway, but it was next to my Uncle Mike's place.
And who did you go with that morning?
My dad.
When you left that morning, who was left at home on the farm?
My mom, my brother, my sister.
Did you and your dad come back to your house or to your farm?
Yes.
And where did you go then?
We went back to the house.
And was it still your mom, Taylor, and Wyatt inside the house?
Yes.
What did you do then?
We ate breakfast.
Who made you breakfast?
My mom.
What was your mom doing when you first walked in before she made you breakfast?
She did not make breakfast like when we walked in. She had already made it. She'd prepared it for us. But when we walked in, she was working on a puzzle.
And who was she working on that puzzle with?
She was alone. She was by herself.
What did you do then after you went inside?
We ate breakfast, talked about how the day was going to lay out and just, I don't know.
Back in November 2018, was there anybody besides you, your mom, your dad, and your brother and sister that worked on your farm specifically?
Yes.
Who else?
My uncle, Mike, my grandpa Leroy, and that's probably about it.
So it was just family?
Yes.
Was there any hired workers that worked on your farm at that time?
No.
After you ate breakfast, what did you do?
We put our plates in the sink and we went outside.
Who did you go outside with?
My dad.
And where did you go when you went outside?
To the hog building.
Did your mom at some point come outside?
Yes.
And do you know what time you went outside?
I can't remember, but I think it was 9:30.
How long after did your mom come outside?
About 2-3 minutes.
Do you remember what your mom was wearing that day?
She was wearing a shirt, sweatshirt, a winter coat, and a pair of pants.
No, you said that you and your dad went to the hog barn?
Yes.
Where did your mom go?
To the same one.
When you went to the hog barn, what were you doing?
We were preparing the barn for infant pigs.
So at that point, were there pigs in the barn?
No.
So what were you doing inside the hog barn?
I was carrying heaters. Since it's in the wintertime, it gets cold and they can get sick and die. So we have to carry feeders that, heaters that heat the pigs so they can stay warm.
What was your dad doing inside the hog barn?
He was putting down these bars that imitates a sow so that the pigs basically it weans them.
Now, this hog barn that you were in, can you just describe it to us a little bit? What does it look like?
It's kind of an open barn. It's got a roof on it, but it's about a football field long. It's got 24 pins in a barn, 12 on each side. There's a small alleyway that you can walk through to get to one end of the barn to the other. It's pretty much, there's feeders in each of the pins that has a water system connected to it.
What was your mom doing after she came out to the hog barn?
She was cleaning light bulb fixtures.
And how was she doing that?
So she would get on a bucket, a 5-gallon bucket, and then she would reach up to these the light bulbs in the ceiling, and there'd be this little glass oval that would go around the light bulb, and it would basically protect the light bulb from being broken and glass discarded on the ground. So sometimes there'd be flies that get in the light fixtures, so she would clean those out.
So would it be fair to say that all three of you were doing different things in the barn?
Yes.
Where were Taylor and Wyatt while the three of you were working in the hog barn?
In the house.
And was anybody else on the farm?
No.
What happened then?
My mom, she kind of, she said she was getting dizzy, and she said that she was bleeding because she had had a surgery a few days prior to that day. And so, she just said that she was dizzy and bleeding. So, and then she kind of she said she was getting really dizzy. So we asked her what was wrong, and she said it was nothing.
Now, Tristan, did you see your mom get dizzy, or did she tell you she got dizzy?
I saw her get dizzy.
What did you see her do?
She kind of had to, when she got in a bucket, she had to hold herself from falling off, and she got down and her legs, she was kind of shaky.
What happened then?
Me and my dad both asked her if she was all right.
Did your dad say anything else to your mom at that time?
No, not at that time.
What did you do then?
We continued working.
What happened after you were working?
She kind of did the same thing, but this time we told her that maybe it was better off if she didn't do that job anymore.
Tristan, did you say that to your mom, or did your dad say that to your mom?
We both did.
Did your dad say anything else to your mom?
Yes.
What did he say?
He said, I really don't think it's wise for you to stay out here because, I don't want you falling off and getting hurt.
Did your dad ask your mom to do anything else?
Yes.
What did he ask her to do?
So that later that day, after we had gotten done with the hog barn, there was we had to go, I think it was feed or water water the chickens. And we have it's a tote, it's a chemical tote that was not being used, and we put a hose on it so we could store water in that tote. And so we use that for water, a water source to carry water to the chickens. And it was in the shop, and there was cats in the shop, and the skid loader was also in the shop, so we didn't want them running away or possibly getting in an accident.
So, Tristan, did your dad say anything to your mom or tell her to do something?
Yes.
What did he say?
He said, if you want to help out, it would mean a lot to us if you would go get the pet cage that was in a barn.
And is that also referred to as a pet carrier?
Yes.
And do you know where that pet carrier was located?
Yes.
Where was it located?
In the red shed, as we call it.
And how far is the red shed from the hog barn that you were in?
From the front of the barn, it's about 30 yards.
Did your mom actually leave the hog barn?
Yes.
And this carrier, it's kind of big, correct?
Yes.
And what would you approximate, well, could you give us an approximation of how much you think that pet carrier weighs?
Probably maybe 15, 18 pounds. I'm not sure.
And your dad asked your mom to get that after she appeared to be dizzy.
Yes.
Did your dad tell your mom where to put it after she got it?
Yes.
Where did he tell her to put it?
They said two things. He said, if you can get it to the shop, that would help. But if you can get it out of the barn, that would be also helpful. But if you just can't get it, then just leave it. We'll get it.
Now, where specifically in the red shed was that pet carrier located?
It was kind of against the wall. I want to say it was against the southern wall, something like that.
So you actually saw your mom then leave the hog barn?
Yes.
What were you doing after your mom left the hog barn?
I continued her job.
And what was that?
Cleaning the light fixtures.
And what was your dad doing?
He was doing the same thing that he was doing just when before she left.
How long were you and your dad in the hog barn together after your mom left?
Probably about another hour and 30 minutes.
Now, while you were in this barn, you were still working?
Yes.
And your dad was doing his job or working as well?
Yes.
At some point, did you lose sight of your dad?
Yes.
Do you know exactly how long your dad wasn't in your sight?
No.
Okay, guys. I'll leave it on that little cliffhanger. Yeah, this is really interesting. And yeah, I do agree. I feel so bad for the poor kid. I can only imagine the trauma he has to this. I am gonna redirect y'all over to Hella. David. I'm gonna redirect over to Excited Utterance. She is doing, I believe, a Delphi Photoshop stream. Delphi Image Evidence live Q&A and pro analysis with Hella. So that should be very interesting. All right, and tomorrow in the morning at 10, I'll be back with Judge Fleischer, and I have a doctor's appointment. I should be back at 4:30 Eastern to do some more of this part 2 of the Corn Rake conspiracy. So I'm going to end now, guys. Thanks so much for being here. It's been a lot of fun, and I shall see y'all over at Hella's. Oh yeah, give me the dates for the next hearing. I will let you know. Grandma trial starts on Monday, the 3rd, but I'll let you know on the Judge Simpson one. All right, guys. Bye.